Hey everyone, it's your girl Samantha here. So I was looking up something regarding Tamar Braxton and fell across this little tidbit here. Apparently, there's a woman in Genesis who's actually named Tamar. And they said Tamar in the Chosen. You see Tamar in the Bible. Why is Tamar important in the Bible? So I'm clicking on it like, okay, like what's going on with Tamar in the book of Genesis? Because I literally have never heard of this woman ever. So I go in, and lo and behold, this says Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Judah, not once but twice. I don't even know what that means. Like she married two different sons of his, and then they said as well as the mother of two of his children, the twins Perez and Zerah. First of all, those names are cute. Second of all, loving that they're having twins because I have twins as well. And let's keep going. So they're saying the Genesis narrative is that in chapter 38, Tamar is first described as marrying Judah's. Okay, I knew it. So that's how she's twice his daughter-in-law of Judah. So they say she first married his eldest son, because of his wickedness. Was killed by God. Oh, Lord. By way of a levirate union, Judah asked his second son, Onan, to provide offspring for Tamar so that the family line might continue. And this is something that I wanted to tell people. Like, a lot of people do not know that in some cultures, including apparently this biblical one, when the husband dies, like if he didn't return to war or whatever, just saw 144 on the timer, the brother would step in and become the father figure / father to the wife that is, now widowed. And that's just what they did. I guess it continued, like they said, the family line. So just something to think about. Okay. So they said this could have substantial economic repercussions, with any son born deemed the heir of the deceased and able to claim the firstborn's double share of inheritance. However, if was childless, Onan would inherit as the oldest surviving son. So there was something here I want to look at. So what is a levirate union? Because they said died. No, yeah, God killed So God does not play, okay? He killed and because was full of wickedness. So Judah's just like, okay, well, I'm going to have you be with my other son. But they said by levirate union. I don't know what that is. So levirate marriage is a type of marriage in which the brother of a deceased man is obliged to marry his brother's widow. Levirate marriage has been practiced by societies with a strong clan structure in which exogamous marriage outside the clan, is forbidden. Ooh, yeah, wow. I think I read about it in Africa, but it looks like it's saying that it's part of a Judaism culture, Islam, Eurasia, Africa. I think I read about it in African culture because I was researching polygamous, I think, because this was back a few years back when I used to do my pro-black activism that I'm no longer doing. And I think everybody was talking about, polygamy, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, let me read up on this mess some more, because they love to throw the Bible around to try to justify their these dusty bandits. But anyways, so it says an alternate form that ghost marriage occurs when a groom dies before marriage. The deceased groom is replaced by his brother, who serves as a stand-in to the bride. Any resulting children are considered children of the deceased spouse. Okay, that is very creepy. Okay, so let's get on back to where we were going. So here you have, so Onan performed a cultus interruptus. His action displeased God, and so, like his older brother, God killed him too. Yikes. Okay, so that's how Judah suddenly became her husband, or I guess. So at this point, Judah is portrayed as viewing Tamar to be cursed, and therefore as being reluctant to give her his remaining and youngest son, Shelah. Rather, he tells Tamar to wait for Shelah. However, even after Shelah has grown up, Judah still does not give Tamar to him in marriage. So I guess he does not trust her. he thinks she's like a black widow or like she's cursed or something. So I'm like loving the Bible. It's kind of like politics. I'm just like, why did I wait so long to get into this? Because it's just so juicy. It's like, what was going on? And it's like you need to know this stuff, especially as a black woman, because black people are like obsessed with religion. And so black males have been using it for the longest. They basically, I feel like they take like all their antics out of like white supremacist playbook. So, the same way white racists gave, slaves, our ancestors, when they were enslaved back in the day, they gave them, like the same way they gave us the Bible, right? And it's like, why would they give us the Bible? They didn't give us nothing else, So, of course, it was to keep us oppressed. You saw in Nat Turner where he was like, forget that. And he started, talking about fighting back and things like that. Okay, my thing's tripping. But anyways, so he was talking about fighting back and stuff instead of like following what the white man wanted him to do. And so it's the same as black guys. Like, it's like they just keep, it's weird. They're so strange because like all they want to do is oppress black women, and it's really disgusting at this point. And it's almost like we need a bill against them because of their hatred for black women. It's like you see that you feel like you'll never be able to fight against other groups of men. So you're just like obsessively trying to conquer black women. It's not going to happen. So after Sheila had grown up, Judah became a widower. After Judah mourned the death of his wife, he planned on going into Timnath to shear his sheep. Upon hearing this news, Tamar disguised herself as a prostitute and immediately went to Timnath, which was en route to Judah's destination. Upon arriving at a place near Timnath where two roads met, Judah saw the woman but did not recognize her as Tamar because of the veil she wore. Because of the veil she wore over her face. Thinking she was a prostitute, he requested her services. What? Judah getting with a prostitute? What's going on here? Don't nobody talk about this. Okay, so let's just keep going. Wow. Never heard that story in Sunday school. So Tamar's plan was to become pregnant by this root so that she might bear a child in Judah's line, since Judah had not given her to his son Shelah. So she played the part of a prostitute and struck a bargain with Judah for a goat, secured by his staff, seal, and cord. When Judah was able to have a goat sent to Timnath in order to collect his staff and seal, the woman was nowhere to be found, and no one knew of any prostitute in Timnath. So that's Genesis, Book of Genesis 38, 12 to 23. Verse 12, 23. So 3 months later, Tamar was reported to Judah by family members to be pregnant. Upon hearing this news, Judah ordered that she be burned to death. Tamar sent the staff, seal, and cord to Judah with a message declaring that the owner of these items was the man who had made her pregnant. Upon recognizing these items as his security, Judah released Tamar from her sentence. Tamar gave birth to twins, Perez and Zerah. And the midwife marked Zerah's hand with a scarlet cord when he emerges first from the womb, though Perez is born first. I have never heard of these names. Perez is identified in the book of Ruth as the ancestor of King David. So the Genesis narrative also makes a note that Judah praised Tamar's righteousness and did not have further sexual relations with her. I'm confused. Praised her righteousness? What righteousness? Anyway, so according to Ethiopic tradition, Perez became the king of Persia. So they have Jewish views. According to the Talmud, Judah's confession of guilt itself atoned for some of his prior faults and resulted in his being divinely rewarded by a share in the future world. The Talmud also suggests that Tamar's actions were for the purpose of avoiding Judah's humiliation, although the Genesis Rabbah portrays her as boastful and unashamed in regard to the pregnancy itself. Both the Genesis Rabbah and Talmud state that Tamar was an Israelite and that Judah ended up marrying her and had further sexual liaisons with her as a result. Okay, so however, some argue that Tamar was Canaanite since her father's residence was not implied to be outside of Canaan in Genesis. She is also theorized to be the daughter of Melchizedek, Melchizedek, Melchizedek. Okay, so yeah, one reason includes Judah prescribing a penalty similar to the one in Leviticus 21:9 against Tamar. Melchizedek was also the only Canaanite priest who worshipped the one true God. So according to the legend of the Jews, Tamar was endowed with a prophetic gift, so on and so forth. Okay, from this gift, she knew that she would be the ancestress of a royal line of David and the mighty prophets. While she was standing in gate Timnah and wearing a veil, Judah, who was intoxicated from wine that twisted his understanding away, came to her. Okay, we're going to blame it on the alcohol, even in the Bible. Okay. So after that, he left her with three symbolic pledges: his staff, the stay of tribe of Judah, his mantle, representation of his strength, and his signet diadem, the glory of kingdom of Judah. So basically, the ancestor for the kingdom of Judah was pretending to be a prostitute, and she married two brothers and had kids with the father. Okay, are we hearing this here? But they're talking about our sexual history nowadays, our sexual style nowadays, and they were doing the most. Okay, what's going on here? When her state became known, Tamar was dragged before the court, in which Isaac, Jacob, and Judah as the judges. As a judge, Judah gave a decision that Tamar was liable to the death penalty by burning, according to the law, for she was the daughter of the high priest Shem. That's actually my ancestor, who was accused of leading an unchaste demeanor. After Tamar showed the three pledges from the man who came to her, Judah's countenance grew pale to green color when he publicly confessed his relationship with her. So in Christian views, according to the Gospel of Matthew, Judah and Tamar are ancestors of Jesus through their son Perez. Wait, what? Wait, okay, so I guess Perez did something that would... Oh, my, I'm not going down this road. So I just wanted to read that out to you all because, yeah, people don't talk about this kind of stuff. Another thing I wanted you all to look at was how let's look when marriage was actually created, because I'm really over it. I'm over it. People are using these things to be oppressive, and I don't appreciate it. So you don't get to judge another woman for not following the Bible when you yourself do not follow the Bible. So what are we talking about out of wedlock? Girl, bye. Boy, bye. Girl, bye. Like, none of you are walking in this perfect world of religion, of Christianity or whatever, which is also man-made. I can't. I'm so fucking over it. It's not even funny. So anyways, the first recorded evidence of marriage is from 2350 BC in Mesopotamia. This suggests that marriage is around 4,350 years old. Marriage became a widespread institution among the ancient Hebrews, Greeks, and Romans. In some cultures, parents would marry a child to the spirit of a deceased child to strengthen family bonds. In the Bible, Abraham married his half-sister, and Isaac and Jacob married cousins. The universality of marriage across different cultures is attributed to the many basic social and personal functions it provides. These include sexual gratification and regulation, division of labor between the sexes, economic production and consumption, satisfaction of personal needs. The ideal of marriage being based on romance as an ideal started to emerge in the 18th century. This shit is extremely recent. You know, for people to be like sitting on a high horse talking about it, they act like this is something that God created. Not the way we see it today. Not at all. He puts together a divine union, which is not what you have from Ray that you met online, like ciao bye. So anyway, so they said the ideal of marriage being based on romance as an ideal started to emerge in the 18th century. This trend continued into the 19th century as people began to move away from family areas and into more densely populated cities. So they said, where did marriage come from? So you find it in Mesopotamia. None of us are Mesopotamian anyways. I mean, It came from something like it's an institution. It says over 4,003 years, 300, 4350 years ago. First and foremost, black people are way older than that. So this was created by white folks. Mesopotamia, like who was living there? Greeks or something? Wasn't even created by our people. And then it was created long after we had not been doing it, from what I can see. Unless they're just skipping and hiding what are skipping and hiding, what part black people played in it, because we were the original people. So yeah. So they said the word origin of Mary is from Middle English, Marian from, okay, it doesn't even matter. I'm just gonna skip past that. They said from Maritas is husband, suitor, Mas is man, Maria Terra is to wed. Yeah. Anyways. So where did marriage vows come from? The oldest traditional wedding vows can be traced back to the manuals of the medieval church. In England, there were manuals of the Diocese of Salisbury, Sarum, and York. The compilers of the First Book of Common Prayer, published in 1549, based its marriage service mainly on the Sarum manual. I cannot. Like, what the fuck? What does this have to do with us? Like, really, like, these are the same churches that put us into bondage, into slavery. Are we seeing the correlation here between slavery and marriage? Okay. So who made the definition of marriage? So Edward Phillips provides what may be the first English dictionary definition of marriage in his New World of Words in 1706, a civil contract by which a man and a woman are joined together for mutual society and help, the lawful begetting of children. I don't know what that last symbol is. I guess that's etc. So they said, are marriage vows in the Bible? Ciao, bye. I can answer that for you, but okay, we're at brides.com, so they're going to have to push their agenda. They said, while the Bible includes verses on love, marriage, and weddings, there aren't any specific marriage vows mentioned. You can, however, use the Bible's inspirational verses in your marriage vows, include them as ceremony readings, or use a short verse as a theme on your invitations and programs. This said, did marriage originate from religion? History of marriage. You're going to go down a deep dive. They have the many faces of marriage. Lord. The history of marriage. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother. Okay. The bond between a man and wife is considered by many to be the closest tie possible for two human beings, closer even than that between blood relatives. But in many societies through history, two people might share both a marriage bond and blood kinship. Generally, modern Americans find the idea of marrying a blood relative to be disgusting. Such was not the case, however, among some ancient peoples. In some periods, for example, it was accepted practice for an Egyptian pharaoh to marry his sister. The reason had to do with keeping the royal line pure by not allowing other families to marry in. Keeping the royal, I would say that, and also it's always coming back to property. Because if you marry outside, then now that person has a stake in your property and you have a stake in theirs. So other ancient societies did much the same thing, although the blood connection might not always be so close. Patriarch Abraham's wife Sarah, for example, was his half-sister. Whether this was common among the early Hebrews is unclear. Both Isaac and Jacob got wives, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, from their cousins. So the ancient Greeks also preferred their young people to marry family members. Their reasons, however, seem to have been primarily economic. By marrying, all of this was economic. By marrying cousins or other relatives, farmland was kept in the family, and the clan never saw its ancestral lands end up in the hands of outsiders. Americans and Europeans up through the early 19th century were not always opposed to marrying within a family. European royal families in particular tried to find marriage matches from a very restricted group of prospective mates. At some point, however, the desirability of keeping a line pure or holding onto family property runs head on into the need for a bigger gene pool. Genetic health problems caused by breeding among relatives can be devastating. A clear example of this was the hemophilia carried in several other related royal houses of Europe, such as the Russian Romanov family. I do not know what hemophilia is, so I'm about to put a pin in that and look it up later. So he who finds a wife, not only who a person marries, but how he or she finds that mate has varied greatly in different times and places. Among tribal people, ancient and modern, capturing women from enemies has been a time-honored way of procuring wives. In Roman mythology, at one point in their early histories, so nowadays we would call that like what, homewrecker? So, anyways, in Roman mythology, at one point in their early history, Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome, and his followers wanted to marry the daughters of a neighboring tribe, the Sabines. The Sabines, when their request was rejected, the Romans decided on a stratagem. They held a great religious festival and invited the Sabines and other neighbors. And people have to realize religious does not just mean like godly; it just means a way of life, or like a culture, or almost like a tradition of doing things. So, at a prearranged signal during the festival, the Romans grabbed the Sabine maidens they wanted and hurried away with them, fighting off any Sabine men who tried to interfere. Eventually, Romulus convinced the women to accept legal marriage, and the two groups peacefully integrated. A similar situation occurred in the Book of Judges when the other tribes of Israel decimated the rebellious tribe of Benjamin in war. Their brother Israelites felt sorry for the few surviving Benjamite men and helped them capture girls from other tribes. Okay. Just snatching women up. That's great. No wonder they think we're their property. It's like never, it started way back. So they're just grabbing up women and from another tribe at a religious festival. And so we're having these festivals, and what is this, like snatch a woman if you can? I mean, this is weird. In order for the Benjamites to produce children and continue to exist as a tribe. In more modern times, the Comanches and other plains. This is reminding me of this woman that someone just showed this lady saying like why she wants to have black like biracial children, and I'm like, is this like real? This is it's crazy. But so anyways, it said in modern times the Comanches and other plains Indian tribes in the 18th and 19th centuries regularly captured women from other tribes and from American and Mexican settlements and made them their wives. Similar examples of gaining wives by capture. Why are they snatching up women? This is weird. Like, that's something to look into. Like, was there a shortage of women in their own tribe? I don't understand why they're having to go grab other women. Where were the women going from their tribe? Or was it because they didn't want to mix with them because of the, what do you call it? Because of the health concerns? And if that's the case, why aren't you able to just kind of peacefully have a mixer and meet each other's people and then, what do you call it? Unite or become something if you're interested in that person. But I think what's also happening here is like maybe people who didn't deserve wives weren't getting that they weren't getting the option to choose to have a wife. So I think that's why they were like just snatching them up and forcing these women to be their wives, which is really gross. So similar examples of gaining wives by capture are fairly common in parts of Central and Southern Asia. Credible reports of forced marriages of Christian women to Muslim men in Egypt and elsewhere show that the practice is still very much alive and makes you want to vomit. So a different method of obtaining a wife throughout much of history has been by an arranged marriage with money passing between the parties. The marriage is arranged because between the groom or his family and the bride's family. The two types of money exchange, dowry and bride price, work in different ways. Some societies follow one of the two practices while other societies may use both. What I don't see in here is anything about love. Like they're really literally just snatching up women and forcing them to marry them, or it's like an arranged marriage, also still like a forced situation there for the bride. 'Cause I'm pretty sure that I feel like the guy, because they always get themselves powder, I'm pretty sure the guy had more power to do whatever he's doing than the woman did. All right, so Next, we have. Okay, so in case where a dowry marriage ends in divorce, the bride takes her dowry and goes home to her family. So the bride price is just what it sounds like. The groom must pay an agreed sum to the bride's family for the privilege of marrying her. I can get behind that. An example of this from the book of Genesis is Jacob's years of unpaid work in order to marry Leah and Rachel. Now guys are asking, what do we bring to the table? These guys have to pay to get their wives. So marriage based simply on the desire of the bride and groom has become almost universal in the Western world only in modern times. So marriage based simply on the desire of the bride and groom has become almost universal in the Western world only in modern times. Such marriages for love seem to have always existed in individual circumstances. Folklore and traditions in many countries tell of love as the main driving force of marriages. Yeah, and fairy tales. Like I said, folklore. So the story of Romeo and Juliet is apparently not an anomaly. Okay, so many faces of marriage. One thing we can all probably agree on is that there's a lot of disagreement about what properly constitutes a marriage. Although it's clear that God instituted marriage, in the beginning there have been differing views about whether weddings are primarily religious or secular events. For much of the early Christian era, the church stayed out of weddings and let the state handle the union of man and woman. For much of the early Christian era, the church stayed out of weddings and let the state handle the union of man and woman. So people don't even realize that either. It was like, the church wasn't even a part of it to begin with in modern times. Yeah, just not even a part of it. I don't even know if they had church in the Bible, like, now that I'm thinking about it. So finally, sometime after 800 AD, the church began to perform weddings, and a few centuries later, the Catholic Church made marriage one of the sacraments. Oh, the same church that enslaved my ancestors. Yippee! So Catholic and Protestant differences in their view of marriage became clear from the beginning of the Reformation. Catholics had long seen marriage as somewhat less godly than singleness, and during the Middle Ages, it is estimated that 40% or more of men and women remained single, either for spiritual reasons or economic necessity. That's interesting. Like, why would they stay single for economic necessity? Or spiritual reasons, for that matter. Like, what spirituality are you following that you're staying single? That's 40% of more or more of men and women. That's like almost half the population. So Martin Luther, however, held the view that marriage was the normal, proper condition of men and women. Wow, thanks, Martin Luther, for just forcing everyone to do something you felt was normal and proper. It became almost universal among his followers and other groups of Protestants. Yippee! So polygamy has been widely accepted in many societies since ancient times. But what exactly is polygamy? Most people have the idea that it means one man has multiple wives at the same time. But polygamy is more generic than that. It means one person, man or woman, having multiple spouses of the opposite sex simultaneously. The term polygyny, literally many women, refers to a man with multiple wives. But in a very few societies, a woman can have multiple husbands at the same time. This latter practice is called polyandry. So, the question of children. So a final aspect of marriage that applies to only a very limited group of people is the responsibility for a marriage to produce an heir. We're not talking about a family's heir, but rather an heir to a country's throne. We're not talking about a family's heir, but rather an heir to a country's throne. In other words, the situation involves royal families only. Possibly the most famous such situation occurred in the early 1500s with England's King Henry VIII, I think. So Henry's father, King Henry VII, had been the final winner in a bloody series of civil wars known as the Wars of the Roses, in which two branches of the English royal family fought it out over which of its members would finally be the unanimously approved monarch. The problem all along had been that no one person had the clear-cut best claim to be the rightful king. To avoid another potential civil war over the throne when he died, Henry VIII wanted to make sure that he had a son. That way there would be no doubt about who the rightful heir to the throne. When his first wife, Catherine, couldn't seem to have a son, Henry started down the road that would eventually bring him to 6 wives and the country to a new brand of Christianity. Okay, so he's just collecting wives. 3 centuries later, young Victoria of England faced her own situation of having to produce an heir. Although she didn't really want to marry, the law actually required her to do so to produce an heir, or she would have lost the throne. So, as you can see, even back then, in those ancient times, I guess you would call them, maybe like around the 1500s and up, women did not want, men and women just weren't really trying to get married even back then. Why people are trying to shove it down our throats now when we have even more rights than we probably have ever had as women, I do not know. And I mean, it's women too. I can see why guys would do it, but women too are signing up for this bondage. Yeah, okay. So marriage has a multitude of phases during the time that mankind has been on earth. One thing seems certain, however: if marriage was important enough for God to invent it at the very beginning, then it must be here to stay. Yeah, but he didn't invent it like the way we're dealing with it. As you can see in the Bible, people got all kinds of different ways they're doing it. Okay, so let's get back out of here.